Indiana football news is on fire right now because they didn't just get two good defensive players back. Indiana may have built the scariest defensive line in all of college football. And I know that sounds crazy to some of you that still believe the Blue Bloods are the only ones in charge in football. Oregon fans are going to say, recruiting rankings. Ohio State fans are going to say, well, look at the NFL talent here. Georgia fans, I guess, if you're on the Big Ten channel, they're going to remind everybody that Georgia exists, and fair enough for certain aspects of those. But when you actually look at what Kirk Cinetti and Indiana have sitting in that front seven now, this is not normal roster depth. This is national championship defense that went into the offseason replacing departing stars and then got some of those departing stars back anyway. So in this episode of the Big Ten Huddle presented by FanDuel, I'm going to show you why Stephen Daley and Kellen Wyatt completely changed Indiana's 2026 ceiling, why the portal additions looked good or looked like replacements may now have become luxury depth, and why the most dangerous part of this group might be the man Bryant Haines himself, who has a lot more new toys and some old toys to play with on the field. So here's what changed with the recent news. All right, Indiana already knew Stephen Daley was returning, and the Colorado court ruling opened another year of eligibility for certain players. So it wasn't just Daley who could do it; others who could come back as well. And that alone was enormous for Indiana. Daley had 19 tackles for loss last season. 19, that's quite a lot, and only starting a portion of the season too. He also had 5.5 sacks, and he was one of the most disruptive defensive linemen in the Big Ten before his season ended after the conference championship game. Then Indiana gets Kellen Wyatt back too, who Wyatt only played 7 games last year before a knee injury ended the season, but in those 7 games, he still had 8 sacks for loss, or 8 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks. Now, stop there for a second. If these were Indiana's 2 biggest offseason additions, we would already be talking about serious proven production coming back, all those things. But they are not additions in the normal sense. Indiana already replaced them. That is what makes this situation so crazy. The Hoosiers went into the portal and got Toby Asusami and Chidi Obazar, I believe is how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I get it wrong, from Kansas State, both from Kansas State. They also got Josh Burnham from Notre Dame to help the front seven. Tyreek Tucker's back. Mario Landino is back. Those were huge in themselves, just getting those guys back. So Indiana spent the offseason building a defensive line for a world where Daley and Wyatt were completely gone. They were not coming back. Then August arrives, the eligibility picture changes, and suddenly those 2 veterans walk back in the door. Think about it like an NFL team losing 2 starters and then signing replacements and then being told right after the season, actually, you can just have these guys back for you. That is not replacing production. That is stacking production, and that is why I think the best defensive line in America conversation is completely fair for us to talk about Indiana. Not because Indiana has one guy everyone agrees is a top 5 NFL draft pick, not because recruiting services say the room as the most 5 stars or anything like that, but because there may not be an obvious weak link anywhere in this rotation. You can start with Daley. You can bring in Wyatt off the edge. You can have Tucker and Landino, or maybe you start with Wyatt since Daley was literally his backup last season. You have Osusami and Obazar, 2 players Indiana brought in and it expected to need help replacing that walked out the door, and now those guys do not necessarily have to carry the room. They can be a part of the wave, and they got other guys in the transfer portal too. I mean, there's other guys on this defensive line I'm not even mentioning off the top of my head. They got so many guys out of the transfer portal. They're bringing guys back, and that matters over a Big Ten season. It matters late in the 4th quarter when an offensive tackle has taken 55 snaps and Indiana is sending another fresh pass rusher at him. That is where depth stops being an offseason talking point and starts changing Saturdays. And here is the part that makes it worse for everyone else. The defensive line is only part of the pressure package. You still have guys like Elijah Hardy after 8 sacks last season. For my money, the best linebacker in the Big Ten, maybe the best linebacker in the country. Isaiah Jones is back with 7. You have Tucker who had 6. Landino had 5. Daley had 5.5, and he didn't even play the entire season. Or he didn't even start the entire season. He didn't even play in the playoff run. Those are 5 of Indiana's leading sack producers and from a championship defense, and they are all back. Indiana also created 30 turnovers last season, the most in the country. That's not an accident with Bryant Haines. He's not doing that and just being like, well, I guess I'm glad we got the ball. That is not a Bryant Haines accident. Pressure speeds quarterbacks up. Pressure creates bad throws. Pressure forces offenses to keep tight ends and running backs in protection instead of sending them into routes. And when you can create that pressure without sending 6 or 7 defenders every play, everything becomes easier behind it. Listen. This is where Indiana's great news can get really, really annoying for everybody else in the Big Ten and also the people they see in the playoffs. Because let's be honest, Indiana almost definitely going to the playoffs now because of these kind of additions. But because the most interesting player in this entire conversation might actually be Kellen Wyatt. Wyatt spent his earlier college career playing linebacker at Maryland. And with Indiana suddenly having so many bodies at defensive end, there's already discussions about whether Bryant Haines can move him around and use him as more of a hybrid piece. He was kind of doing that before with the stud position options that they had for him to be able to do some of that. Mikael Kamara, obviously, last year was a big part of that. His versatility can give Haines more schematic options. That is the thing I would be watching the most. Not does Kellen Wyatt start? I think that's not the best question. The better question is, where does he line up on 3rd and 7? Can he stand up outside? Can he mug the line and drop? Can Indiana put Daley, Tucker, Wyatt, and one of those Kansas State transfers on the field together and force quarterbacks to figure out which 4 of them are coming? Because Haines does not need another name for the depth chart. He needs chess pieces. And Indiana suddenly has a whole box full of them. We already figured they did because of the coaching and what they can produce, but now you have proven guys who are proven to be able to use the scheme and do it the way they need to. This is also where FanDuel gives us a useful kind of check on reality and what people are thinking. See, at the time of me recording this, FanDuel has Indiana at plus 900 to win the national championship, outside of the top 5 in the country. Ohio State is plus 550, Oregon plus 750, Texas plus 800, and Georgia plus 850. So the market is not treating Indiana like they are the top, team to win the national championship, which I think is a mistake. They're still giving them respect, as a high odds team, but I think is a mistake. You got to have Indiana up there in the top 3 or 4 because Indiana looks like a powerhouse this season with a couple of these guys coming back. They're right there among the national contenders. And I would argue, though, these defensive returns are one of the reasons Indiana might be more dangerous than the average fan even realizes, because everybody's got their mind on Fernando Mendoza being gone, right? And they should. You do not casually replace a Heisman winner, okay? We saw what happens when LSU tried to replace Jaden Daniels. We saw what happened when other Heisman winners try to get replaced. The difference here is you got Cignetti, right? Josh Hoover has real pressure on him. The Indiana offense could absolutely have growing pains, but what if Indiana does not need Hoover to be Mendoza? That's the open question I keep coming back to. What if the defense is good enough that Indiana can win differently? You see, last season, this front produced 7 sacks against Illinois, 6 in the first Oregon game, and 5 in the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State. Ohio State's offensive line, who was doing amazing all season protecting Julian Sayer, I think they only had 1 or 2 sacks going into that game. Those are not empty numbers piled up against bad competition. This defense has already shown it can affect high-level teams. Now, a return a huge chunk of that production, add more portal depth, and hand Bryant Haines' 2 veterans back that Indiana did not expect to have. That changes so much on this defense, so much more than people realize. Instead of asking Hoover to win 42-38, you're thinking, well, maybe the defense isn't as good. Indiana can securely go after 21-10 if they need to. Not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying that is more of a presentable option if you have injuries and stuff in the defense. Instead of asking the offense to be perfect, maybe the defense gives its extra possession and short field, as Kirk Cignetti loves for them to do. Instead instead of the defending champions, by recreating the 2025 offense, maybe Cignetti leans harder into the thing that travels everywhere, which is defense, which we know he's going to lean into, he's going to want to have. Now, there are two reasons I'm not ready to call this the number one defensive line in the country first. And I know I've been hyping him up, but just give me a second here, okay? Health is first. Both Daley and Wyatt are coming off significant injuries. Wyatt's knee injury ended the season after 7 games, and Daley's season ended after the Big Ten championship game. Having their names on the roster is not the same thing as having both players 100% in October. Daley's already been out on the practice field. I'm sure we'll see Wyatt at some point on the practice field, so that looks good, but are they 100%? But Indiana's depth helps there too. They do not have to rush either player because the room already is built to survive without them. The second issue is the eligibility rule in itself. Those extra seasons came through a preliminary injunction, and there is still legal uncertainty around how everything ultimately plays out. The reporting notes, reporting out there, if you read on this, notes that schools have been cautious because of the possibility that an NCAA appeal could eventually alter this situation. So yes, there is some risk here, but from Indiana's perspective, you take that risk every single time, because if Daley and Wyatt are healthy and eligible for the whole season, Cignetti might have turned an off-season concern. Oh, are we gonna, how are we gonna do without these leading tackle for loss guys and everything else, into one of the biggest strengths on the roster without undoing any of the portal work he already did. And that's why the Big Ten should be paying attention. Look, Ohio State has elite talent. Oregon has elite talent. Michigan is always going to want to win games through the line of scrimmage, the trenches. But Indiana is not trying to survive in that neighborhood anymore. The defending national champion is building a roster designed to stay at the top. Not just stars, not just one pass rusher they can lean everything on, but not just a good starting 4 out there, but waves, options, rotations, different lineups, different groupings. You could have a pressure package. You could have a run defense package. You could have all these different packages to put guys in there to do what they do best. And a coordinator who now has ways to create problems that he had when Indiana won the national championship, he still has those ways. Bryant Haines still has the toys to play with. So is Indiana's defensive line definitely the strongest and the best in college football? I'm not going to say that yet. I think they are, but I'm not going to say it for sure yet. We'll see what happens. But are they scariest? Yeah, they are definitely the scariest. I think that argument is very real, and I think anybody that is not calling them the scariest either A, doesn't know what they're talking about, or B, is in total and complete denial at this point. Because the nightmare for the rest of the Big Ten is not just Stephen Daley came back. It's not just that Kellen Wyatt came back. It is that Indiana already replaced them before they returned. And now everybody else has to deal with the replacements and the returning players. If there is a defensive front that you would take over Indiana's right now, put it in the comments. Would like to let me know. I would love to hear what any of your arguments are, right? If it's something different than what I said, or if you're an Oregon fan and you say, returning production, all right, fair. But let me know what your arguments are and who you got as the best one. Like the video, subscribe to the Big Ten Huddle for more Big Ten football and basketball analysis. Join us here for the live shows on Sunday and Tuesday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Look forward to having you there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. See you next time.